This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. There's been a lot going on in Browns practice. I want to bring in somebody who's there every day. Cam, how you doing?
I'm doing good. In the parking lot at Browns practice. The rain just fell. A lot of lightning and thunder, but we stayed dry somehow. And I'm gonna stay that way in my car.
Hopefully it doesn't end up hopefully the weather stays cool in Kansas City, because I'm not trying to sit through another 2-hour delay while everybody's arguing about whether the starter should play or not, or it's hopefully we can avoid that, especially in the preseason.
So. But it's supposed to be just super, super hot out there, so we'll see, like in the hundreds.
In the hundreds.
Yeah.
And that game's at 1. So you're probably gonna see a lot of cramps if they don't hydrate. Yeah. So we're here to talk about Browns practice. I think one of the things that's been talked about a lot is Jed. And unfortunately for him, every time he goes up against MYLES, somebody decides to record it. And instead of being like, oh my goodness, hey, look at MYLES, he's great, we go and freak out about Jed. But what have you seen from him when it's not MYLES? Because I feel like that's a fair barometer on what he's going to be going up against the rest of the league.
Yeah, I think Jed has kind of held his own. He's just working every day to be out there. I know he's throughout the season's had some health things. I know that's probably top of mind for him, but Myles Garrett beats everybody. And I am one of the ones that record the video. It's more of a testament to Myles Garrett. And honestly, if that's who you're losing to, okay. I posted a video of DeJuan Jones, and no one expects him to be a seasoned product. He's a rookie. He's got a lot of work to do, but they had him going up against the rotation, and he lost a lot of times. And I posted that video, and it shouldn't be a negative connotation on DeJuan Jones. It's more of, look at the defense, look at the work they're getting. DeJuan Jones is a brick wall, and they are moving through him. This is a really good test for the defense too, even though he is a rookie. So when he loses, that's a really good learning lesson for him. And then same with Jed and anybody on the offensive line. It's a testament to your defense. Now, if it's happening all the time, you're not beating anybody, well, that's a problem. I don't think that's the case here. I think they're just going up against a really strong defensive front, and that's really good for them. So it is a bummer to have to see that video, but there's two sides to everything. So if you're looking for a silver lining, he's losing to his own defense, which is supposed to be and so far has shown that they can be very explosive, and they're a tough contest.
And I think it doesn't get around well enough that an offensive lineman against any defensive lineman one-on-one is not really a fair fight because of the job that offensive linemen have to do. And especially when you're looking at it from a one-on-one drill, or we're just looking at one isolated part of it, it could be real easy to be like, oh, the defensive lineman won or the defensive lineman lost. It's hard to tell without that game action being in there to see, oh, did this lead to a pressure? Did this lead to Deshaun having to step up or roll out? Because you never really know until you get out there in the game. So it's kind of hard to tell these things, but it is nice to see Myles look dominant or more dominant in practice. I've pointed this out. I've heard more, or it feels like we hear more about Myles this year than it has been in camps past. Is that matching up with what you're seeing every day down there? And if you think, what happens if Myles Garrett takes a leap? He's already at 2 16-sack seasons back to back.
I think what happens if he takes a leap is he's DPOY. I mean, there's no question there. He's wanted it for a long time, and he's come relatively close. Things have happened the season that it seemed like it might be right there in his grasp. That was the year he got a suspension, and it's just things like that have kind of gotten in the way. But I think with that leap, yeah, that he could get his goal of being the defensive player of the year, and that leap then helps boost the Browns defense, which is the most important thing. I think you see an even more dominant disruptor and someone who can make those big plays when you've when he's got somebody who can consistently be on his opposite or be next to him and put the pressure on with him, it makes it very difficult for anybody to stop him. And so when he has the Darius Smith out there, Obo Okoronkwo out there, and they're quick and they're getting there and they're getting the pressures, plus along the interior, you've got Dalvin Tomlinson looking to be explosive. He wants to make plays too. So when you've got these guys, which is, I love that the Browns put such an emphasis on fixing this defense, and I think you're seeing it. But I really think that with the help of what they provide to this team, Myles Garrett not only takes a leap in the game setting and like the defense takes a leap, but Myles Garrett's entire game, that his stat count goes up, his pressures go up, his ability to get there, and the disruptiveness that he already has goes up. And I don't think that it would be out of the realm of a possibility if this defense does what it needs to do, that Myles Garrett could not win that award that he's been so long waiting for and coveting.
It's interesting too when you look at his career. 2019, that was the year that he hit Mason Rudolph in the head with the helmet. I believe he had 10 sacks in like 10 games or something like that. So he was on pace to get at least 16 that year. Yep. He doesn't get to play those last few games. And then you go to the year after, he got COVID right at the tail end of that season, really kind of derailed it. I think he ended up with like 12 sacks. So he doesn't miss that chunk of games, doesn't get COVID. He probably gets to 16 again. And we're talking about very easily him having 4 back-to-back 16-sack seasons, which I don't know how many people have accomplished that. And we also don't even think like that's his prime. That's the best version of him. We feel like there's more that you can get out of him. I remember having a similar conversation about Pat Mahomes with Ryan Tracy, who works with the Chiefs. And it was like, it's crazy, but he's getting better, right? And then he's like, yeah. And then last season happens, and you look at those numbers, they're incredible. And everybody's like, yeah, well, it's Pat Mahomes. It's like 5,000 plus yards, 55 touchdowns, and we take it for granted. It's like, what can Myles do there? But let's jump to another guy who is looked to be at one of the best players in his position, Denzel Ward. Since the focus has kind of been on like Deshaun this camp and Elijah Moore, there's not been a lot of talk about specifically what you're seeing from Denzel Ward, right? What have you seen out there? Because I just haven't seen like the focus be on him as much.
Yeah, he's had a good camp. He's showing off that the lockdown that he's been able to do. There's a couple plays even today. He's made some really big plays out here in camp, and it's just that Denzel Ward that you expect. So nothing crazy, which is I think what has kept him it's kept him under the radar a little bit, because he's having a really good camp. He's covering guys well. He's testing that offense, and he's been really good at that. There's not been anything negative, right? It's just been it's who he is. That lockdown defense, and he shows that. So I think that's probably why it's so quiet, because it's not as if he's taken another step. He's not impressing anybody in the sense of like, we haven't seen this before. He's not disappointing anybody either. So I think he's just kind of coasted by. That's why maybe you're not hearing a lot about what Denzel's doing, but he's doing a good job at camp. He's doing exactly what you'd expect for him to be doing. Nothing wild, but doing his job and doing it pretty well. Practice, preseason, we'll see some more. But yeah, I think Denzel Ward's that guy that this is what you get from him. You like the consistency. Now it's about translating to the regular season and keeping it that way. But yeah, very good camp for him. No, I don't think anyone's got any complaints about what he's been able to do out here on the field.
Yeah, and it's like with Denzel's talent, that's never been a question. The things that's kind of been an issue for Denzel has been some of the communication stuff, right? Like whatever was going on between him and John Johnson all year, whatever was going on between the whole secondary. Have you seen anything that looks like some of the symptoms that you would have saw in camp in past years pop up with the secondary? We're like, oh man, he's running free a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Or these two don't ever seem to feel like they're on the right page.
No, it's actually, now you bring it up, you see it, but you haven't really talked about it. But there hasn't been a ton of wide open guys out here, even in practice, which is a really good, that's a big testament for what the secondary is doing. there have been a couple plays where, like Amari Cooper's wide open. Oh, that's good news because he's an elite route runner. So I hope he could be able to, run himself open. But for the most part, there's not guys just wide open. There hasn't been giant breakdowns in the defense or miscommunications that we saw last year. And it's training camp, so maybe that hasn't had the time to get there because a lot of this has been installation and it's like the light work. But so far there hasn't been, and we know it very well. We see it all the time. The plays break down and then it's that miscommunication. And it's not really happening out here, which is a really good sign. Now, again, it's training camps, it's practice, so you're not getting that full in-game feel, even when you're going 7-on-7, 11-on-11s. Like, you're not going to get that. There did crowd noise today, but that communication where it can falter, what we saw in games last year, there hasn't been really that opportunity. Preseason games a little bit, but I think as the regular season approaches and, you get into week 1 and week 2, and if you don't see more than, maybe 1-2 defensive breakdowns and miscommunications, I think that you have figured out, okay, they've got the communication down. And it's been a big part of what they're doing. Jim Schwartz they said he's simplifying the communication. Everything has been simplified. Now there's a lot of looks that they're looking to bring out and making the defense a little bit more intricate as the weeks go on, but it's not this. Last year, Joe Woods and even before, he called it his menu, and he would increase the menu. He wanted to start the menu small and build the menu up. I don't think that is what's happening here. I don't think that Jim Schwartz has a giant menu that he wants to get to. I think he's giving them, here's your meal, and this is what you've got, and here's how you're going to get there. So I don't think it's anything. It's not too extensive. I think these guys are understanding it, and it's easy for them to communicate what they need to be doing, which was the biggest issue on defense, was getting that communication on the same page, and they just weren't. So I think that it's a good sign so far that there hasn't been that, and now you just want to see it translate, and hope that communication can continue to be as strong as it is out here in camp.
Now, I know Kevin said that they're going to have starters play this week versus the Chiefs. Do you think there's going to be any starters that we did not get a look at versus the Commanders that we're going to be able to see this week? Or is it going to be relatively kind of the same group of guys, the guys who don't have a history of soft tissue, and the 7-on-7 guys basically on offense?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be very similar. There's the way they're talking, it feels like just maybe Nick Chubb makes his first preseason game and appearance.
When's the last time he's played in a preseason game?
He said years ago when he was asked. So
I think it was when he was wearing 31 still, and he was awful. I remember he was not good in the preseason. We were kind of worried about that pick, about Nick Chubb. Yeah, because he averaged like 3 wins.
But he kind of hinted that, like, if they want him to, he's down. I don't know what we'll see there. Maybe we'll see Nick Chubb. I don't know that you need to, but it might be good just to, if there is some concerns, or not concerns, but like a desire to see him doing what they're doing. Like today they went Wildcat and he took a direct snap. Like, I don't know that that's going to happen in a preseason, but even just him in the passing game, if you want to see that with a competition against you and guys who are not wearing your colors going against you and trying to prevent that, this is the perfect opportunity to see. But they might just have the confidence and know that Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb and kind of roll some of that out as the regular season comes in. But I don't know. We'll see. I know we will see Jakeem Grant, which is, I wasn't sure if they were going to, but he'll return punts and kicks, which is good. We didn't see him before. We should see him on Saturday, which is nice.
Don't even believe we saw him in the preseason last year because he got hurt before.
He got hurt and
the preseason started. Yeah, so at least we finally get to see him out there, right?
Yeah.
And I think the plan, or at least my thinking of the plan for Deshaun, is you want to just get him. It's kind of like boxing when you spar with somebody, right? Like in practice, you're kind of sparring. You know what you're trying to go for. You know what you're aiming for, but you're not going full speed. And then, like, if somebody makes you mad while you're sparring, then you start, getting to your fight speed. And I think this is all about just getting Deshaun used to being at his fight speed. I remember when he came back last year, he mentioned cardio was the one thing he was like, man, I was not used to how much energy it takes out of you to just be out there with the adrenaline going. And I think that's mainly what they want to have him go out there for, is like, hey, let's get a couple long drives. Obviously, you want him to be successful, but you also just want Deshaun to get comfortable being out there, knowing what that's going to feel like, feeling that adrenaline, and also like making decisions with that adrenaline. Because last year, I thought that like you would see when that adrenaline kicked in on a couple of those interceptions where he was like really excited with
Got
his feet or where
nervous.
he was about to go. Yeah,
Yep.
he was like he felt it and thought it before he saw it, because his
Yep.
mind was moving faster. Well, his
Mhm.
body was moving faster than his mind was. He wasn't used to just being out there, and he ended up not seeing a safety underneath that he usually would. So it's I think it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you saw that become an issue with him last year. You want to make sure he's comfortable. He's been comfortable sparring all summer. That's great. But also you want to just see him get that energy, get that adrenaline going. What we saw last time he was out there was very good. Kind of want to see more of the same, just comfort being under that kind of adrenaline.
No, absolutely. I think that's kind of what it is the game action. You can't replicate it when you're going against your own guys. Like, you can get there. There's not contact. There's no threat of being sacked for real. The pressures are half. It's not the feeling. So, 3 passes in a preseason game, you want a little bit more for him, and I see that for sure. You want to be safe and smart, but I think that there is probably no better test. If you weren't going to play him against the Eagles, well, here you are. You play him against the Chiefs. This is the reigning Super Bowl champs. I mean, this is as good of a test that you can get in a limited amount of series for your quarterback and your offense, and going against a team that just won it all. And I think this is I like that they've had 2 weeks of going up against the Super Bowl champs, Super Bowl contenders. That kind of competition, you can't get it, you can't simulate it, right? And so on Saturday, for Deshaun to be out there and have the full game speed going up against top competition, and really implementing all the things that they've been able to do in more than probably just 3 passes, 20 to 25 plays. So should be able to see a little bit more from him, and I think that's going to be great for him. And I don't know that the Browns necessarily needed to see anything from him. Obviously, he's the starting quarterback. There's no question there. But it is good for him to get that, just gear up for week 1 with this big test. And it's really, it's just, you can't match it. So, of course,
you see teams do this. Like Kansas City did this last week with Pat Mahomes, where they kind of had him out there for, I think, 3 drives. And you could tell the first drive, Pat was like, oh, yeah, I got to get used to feeling it. And then by the time he got to the second, third drive, he was doing Pat Mahomes stuff. And it's just like, you just want to get them to remember what it feels like so they can be comfortable during the season when they get there, so they can have some confidence. Really, that's like confidence. Okay, I remember how this feels. I'm not going to freak out when it happens. Yeah. Let's talk about David Njoku, because we didn't really get to see much of him. He got like 1 screen pass against the Commanders. I've been hearing great things about him in camp. Basically he's been going uncovered all camp, or he's been hard to cover. Do you think the combination of him maybe even taking a leap plus Deshaun, we know where he likes to go with the ball, especially in the red zone. Do you think this is going to be kind of like similar to how we talked about with Elijah Moore, where their skill sets kind of match up perfectly? Do you think this is another marriage of convenience where David Njoku's skill set kind of matches up with what Deshaun's kind of read preferences are, especially in that part of the field?
Oh, absolutely. Especially in that part of the field. Njoku had that big catch last year. It was incredible, and that was kind of to me, the epitome of what he can do. He'll go up there, he can grab that ball, he'll come down with it, like him versus another guy, like body on the line. David Njoku's coming down with that ball. He's got to get his hands on it. And I think that's huge for Deshaun, to be able to connect with him, know that 50-50 ball is probably going to come down with Njoku. And there's been an emphasis, though. I think what makes it maybe even more promising is David Njoku has put an emphasis this year on his route running. He's focused in the past on blocking. He's focused on, just coming down with that ball when he's the guy in the end zone. But this year for him, it was about trying to be the kind of route runner that opens up his game and opens up the offense for Deshaun. And if he's able to kind of take that a leap there, I think that is where we'll see a huge change in what this offense could be, because we know what David Njoku can do in the red zone, in the end zone, and those passes. We know that, if it's a short pass and it's kind of not an ambulance ball because you never want to throw
Mhm.
those, but as close as you can get to it, and David Njoku's there, he's that kind of guy that he'll get that pass, he'll get that ball. But for him to be able to be a route runner and to get himself open with his feet and not just have to come down with the ball. I think that is where this offense could really, really open up, because that's just another guy that you have to monitor like crazy. You have to get your best guys on him because he'll get that ball. And if he gets it, he's probably he might shed some tackles. You don't want him to get that. Like, that's not what you want as a defense. And so you have to put maybe more resources into watching him. It's not just him in the end zone, it's him all over the field. I think that's going to do nothing but benefit Deshaun, because not only will he be able to work through his reads of guys like Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, but you've got options and options, and it opens it up to maybe Njoku's your short little almost check down pass. Maybe he's a little deeper because he got himself open. It just, that's the kind of stuff that, like, I think Deshaun Watson has to be excited about, right? Because here's this offense that's being able to do so many different things, and you've got guys that are putting emphasis on what maybe they were not as strong with. I just think that they're building up something really, really great on the offense. They just have to be able to get it done. But the focus is, I really like where their focus is. They've kind of picked apart all the things that they needed to grow on, and it's really promising to see that from them.
And interesting that David mentioned that, hey, I want to kind of get my route running up a little bit better, because I'm thinking if you look around the AFC North, you do have a lot of defenses outside of maybe Cincinnati. Cincinnati doesn't run a lot of base, but you have Pittsburgh and Baltimore who run a lot of base, which means if you can get David Njoku in gun and put him in the slot where he's kind of just standing up like a normal receiver, you're going to be able to match him up against a linebacker. And if you could have an Amari Cooper, or maybe you run it out of trips, you can have Amari and Elijah there running some kind of combo to drag those corners away from him so you can isolate him on that back pylon. I think that's something that you're probably going to see from David this year, is allow him to use his size and physical ability to get that matchup against the linebacker. And then maybe you can also use Cedric Tillman as another big body there to kind of occupy the safety, so you don't have to worry about them kind of like basically, bracketing him in the end zone, which is what's been happening to him and why he hasn't been able to be utilized, is that everybody's like, that's the biggest dude on the field, we're going to worry about him going over top. You need some size to kind of offset it out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they use David in combination with all the different combinations they could throw out there now that they have a different style of receiver. And that's another thing I want to talk about with this team, because that's the big difference in the receiver room from years past. Is in years past, I thought the talent in the receiving room was fine. It was just 6 foot wide receiver that's a good route runner, 6 foot wide receiver that's good at, getting the ball with Yak, and he's maybe a little bit faster than this one. And there's another 6 foot possession receiver. And then this DPJ who's 6'2", but plays more like a 6 foot possession receiver, right? He kind of plays more like Jarvis, except for Jarvis was a little bit more dangerous after the catch. So it's like you don't really have, or you didn't have a great amount of versatility that you could throw out there when it comes to your packages, especially in the goal line, because you didn't have a big guy who could go up and get it. You didn't have, maybe somebody like Elijah Moore who you could throw a little back pylon to, because he could jump, he can run, cut, and then he can kind of beat somebody to a spot because he has elite quickness. We saw him out quick Denzel Ward. If you can out quick him, you're going to be fine. You could throw an out if you want to in the red zone, right? Like that's going to be there for you one-on-one. And I think having those different types of those different types of receivers creates different types of problems for defenses. And when you have to solve for more than one problem, which defenses hadn't had to do in the red zone. They're like, hey, what do we do with Nick Chubb? And what do we do if they run a combo route to try to get something in the middle of the field in the red zone, right? Like that's basically how Browns been running pick plays for the last 2 years to try to get something in the red zone where like somebody comes over top, somebody sneaks in underneath, and then that's how the Browns get in the red zone from the passing game. But now you have to worry about so many different parts of the field that's going to kind of stretch the team out, and it's going to simplify the red zone offense because now you can just be like, okay, they're doing that. They're spread there. All right, check to a run. Nick Chubb just runs it up the middle and it's wide open there because they cloud it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot that you could do there.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, I think one of the big things is where I was a little skeptical going into training camp because I thought what they needed was that super quick wide receiver that was just a speedster. And what Anthony Schwartz could be if he was a little more inept at catching the ball. He's struggled with that. He's got the speed, but it's about coming down with the ball. So what they thought they were going to get in Anthony Schwartz is what I thought that they were going to target. And Elijah Moore is very quick, but I didn't necessarily think, okay, that addresses exactly what I thought that they were going to do, to go out to just get a burner guy. But seeing him, he has enough quickness that he can be that guy that he'll burn you. He said, like, put him on an out route, like he's gone, like that's it. But the way that the Browns have pieced together some of the receivers in that room has been all about versatility. So where I thought that they might not have enough not talent, but skill in the speed, they got, but it's not just that with Elijah Moore. He's that versatile guy that you can have him in the backfield. You can have him lined up anywhere. And he, like, his connection with Deshaun Watson is real and there's no questioning it. And so I think that's a huge part too. But then like you said, you've got guys across the board that you can use in different areas and you can use to your strengths. You've got the big body guys, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, DPJ, Cedric Tillman more so the big body player, like you said. But he's not as quick maybe as DPJ, but plays fast, which is really good. Like that offsets the physical quickness, the way that Cedric Tillman can play very fast out here. That gives him that little edge too. And then you've got Amari Cooper with the route running and just an innate ability to catch the ball. And that he's really worked on his connection with Deshaun Watson. Again, this year, you see like just perfect timed passes from Deshaun to Amari Cooper. Like the two guys that I think his timing is the best with is Amari Cooper and of course Elijah Moore. Like there is the anticipation is there. You're seeing him kind of figure out where they like the ball to be. He had a nice one though today. He just right to Donovan Peoples-Jones as he walked in the end zone. That's the kind of stuff where you have guys that are versatile. It makes it a little bit harder to maybe get on the same page, but once you're on the same page, everything's wide open. I think that the Browns did a better job than I thought they had going into this training camp and this offseason, throughout the offseason. I think they did a better job of assembling the receivers room than I had thought seeing it in action